This is Malta News Live with Cyrielle Delmas.
Good evening, Malta. The stories tonight. 5 international press freedom NGOs joined local activists last week to commemorate the assassination of Daphne Caruana Galizia. What's their message? And I'm welcoming nationalist MEP Francis Zamit-Demek and Labour EP candidate Cyrus Engerer to discuss freedom of media and expression. What are their positions? But first, a feature on the memorial event of Occupy Justice in Valletta. Michael Kaden reports.
Daphne Caruana Galizia, 1 year on. The movement Occupy Justice commemorates the assassination of the investigative blogger with an event in Valletta. A short revival for the makeshift memorial at the Great Siege Monument. The first speeches of the evening are held by delegates of 5 international press freedom NGOs. International and local activists are pressing for more efficient, independent and public investigations into the Caruana Galizia murder. But the later the evening, the more general the criticism of the government becomes.
We do not want a corrupt government. We do not deserve a corrupt government. We deserve a prime minister who knows the meaning of political accountability. We deserve a prime minister we can count on to do the right thing. We deserve a prime minister who has the integrity to resign. We deserve better. Because this is our nation. This is our home, and we are the people. We expect better, we demand better, and we deserve better. Thank you.
The event is a success, with more than 1,500 people attending and even more following online. Occupy Justice, a self-declared non-partisan movement led by women, is mainly supported by the Busuttil PN. The former PN leader and now controversial MP attends most of the Occupy Justice events first row.
First of all, we need justice. Justice for Daphne and justice for the country and for the Maltese people. And for the future, I have hope. I have hope that we will overcome. I have hope that together we will manage to overcome this difficult time. And journalism is a large part of it. Journalism is part of democracy, and this is exactly what is wrong with our democracy at the moment. Journalism has been hit, therefore our democracy has been hit, and we have all been hit. But we will overcome this.
Another PN first row fighter for justice is MEP Francis Zamit-Demek. His statement on future of journalism comes a bit more pessimistic.
I am afraid that with the situation prevailing, I can't say, unfortunately, that journalists have more freedom of expression. And the reason why I say that, because until justice is really done with regard to the brutal assassination of Daphne Caruana Galizia, that means that there is an atmosphere of intimidation that affects journalists in general. But it goes even beyond that, because I know how independent journalists are being subjected to hate speech on social media. I know how there are trolls employed by the government to post comments, even artificially on the media, to try to ridicule the independent journalists. I also know how the government uses its financial power to be able to support the media that is favorable to the government, but acts much less favorably with the media that is critical of the government. So the situation is a terrible one. I have had occasion to refer to this issue even in the context of my work as member of the European Parliament. I am proud of the fact that I have been able to move amendments for better protection of whistleblowers, for better protection of journalists all across Europe, and I hope that Malta will eventually benefit from the standards we are trying to provide over there.
However, there's one message we all can agree to. Don't kill publicists. And regarding this,
we too must be Daphne.
And we hope for a better future of journalism. One of the 5 international press freedom NGOs joining the memorial activities was Reporters Without Borders. We talked to Ades-Mevel about the state of free journalism in Europe.
Alors la situation se détériore en
The
Europe.
situation is getting worse and worse in Europe. Reporters Without Borders said it many times.
Donc jour pour jour,
A year ago, a journalist was assassinated within the European Union.
Cet événement a marqué vraiment une étape, en fait.
This event marked a big step for the whole world, and it was followed by another assassination back in February. Last week, there was also the assassination of a Bulgarian journalist.
C'est très important de rappeler.
For us, it's very important to remind everyone that within the European Union, there are still assassinations of journalists, and it is not acceptable that the situation remains the same. There has to be something done by the European institutions, so the murderers are judged in front of the justice. I think this is what matters the most. What happened in Malta has to be solved in a way that it will never happen again.
De façon à ce qu'on n'ait plus à déplorer ce genre de disparition, ce genre d'assassinat au sein de l'Union européenne.
And I'm going to talk to PN MEP Francis Zamidemek and Labour Party MEP candidate Cyrus Delmas to discuss freedom of press and freedom of expression in Europe and especially in Malta. Good evening to the both of you. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here.
Mr. Zamidemek, what are your thoughts on the freedom of press nowadays?
Well, I'll be very frank with you. When we talk about freedom of the press in Malta nowadays, I believe there is much that needs to be done further. There is much that, in fact, is not being done. Why? Because first and foremost, freedom of the press also implies freedom of access to information. And we are now reaching a point where journalists repeatedly make requests under the Freedom of Information Act to government ministers, and they never receive a reply. But then, of course, there is a much harsher reality. And that harsher reality is the fact that we are doing this program just over a year since the assassination of Malta's most investigative journalist, Daphne Caruana Galizia. Now, apart from the fact that justice has not yet been done, because we are nowhere closer, at least as far as we know, to know who have been the persons behind this assassination. But then I have another thought to share with you that regards precisely freedom of the press, freedom of expression. Very often we make the mistake of saying that was an assault on the freedom of expression of a particular journalist, the ultimate death, assassination. But it has actually been an assault on each and every one of us, because freedom of expression is not only the right to impart information, but as the Convention of Human Rights, the European Convention points out, as the European Charter of Human Rights points out, it is also the freedom to receive information. And if I, as a citizen, no longer can enjoy the right to see what Daphne would like to impart to me on a daily basis, then my own freedom of expression has been really damaged when that assassination took place.
Mr. Angera.
I actually love the new Malta. I love the way that we are no longer afraid to change laws. I love the fact that we are no longer afraid to change those laws, which for years needed to be changed. But however, Minister Ades-Mevel was the Minister for Culture back then, did not change any of these laws. And we have seen in the past 5 years a change that was really needed to give more freedom.
Your party has changed these laws, you're telling me?
Yes, the Labour government has changed a number of laws when it comes to censorship, for instance, and the arts and culture, when it comes to the press reform that we have seen a few years ago, when we see that today there is no more criminal libel that anyone could accuse journalists of within our courts. These are positive changes that we have seen in the past few years, changes which have also been praised by a number of international organizations. So I think that, yes, there's much more to do, and we will be doing that. However, we cannot say that we have gone backwards, but we have gone really much forwards. And that is something that most of us, I believe, love about the new Malta, the Malta that we are living in today. A Malta which is no longer afraid to make these changes, a Malta that has in fact given freedom of expression to anyone and everyone. Obviously, we do condemn the murder of blogger Daphne Caruana Galizia. It was a black day for all of us. However, let's not only look at freedom of expression and freedom of speech by what happened to Ms. Caruana Galizia. Yes, that is condemnable. That is something which should never have happened. That said, we have moved forward a lot as a country in the past years. And yes, today we all enjoy the new laws, the changes in laws that have been taken up within the past 5 to 6 years. I really wish that these laws had been changed before, but unfortunately they weren't.
Mr. Zemek, any comments on the new laws?
My comment about what I have just heard is that this is a government that specializes in cosmetics, in appearances. Because, I mean, my colleague here speaks about government now enacting a law not to have censorship. And then you have the minister responsible for justice, who is engaging on a daily, regular basis in censoring freedom of expression by the people of Malta, who would like to pay tribute to Daphne Caruana Galizia. They place a memorial in her honor, and that memorial is removed regularly by public cleansing department employees on direct instructions from the government. I would like to think that there is far more areas where they can carry out public cleansing and leave freedom of expression alone. And I'll give you another example of hype, of cosmetics. The famous law about whistleblowers. Do we really protect whistleblowers in this country?
Of course we
don't.
Of course we do.
We protect a whistleblower who would come out forward and who would say anything that pleases the government. If that is done, that whistleblower will receive direct orders and become a millionaire. But if a whistleblower will say anything that affects the government, that the government does not like, that whistleblower ends up fearing for his or her life.
Mr.
Unfortunately,
you said that these new laws have been done since 5 to 6 years. But
in the past 5 to 6 years.
In the past 5 to 6 years, but unfortunately, what happened to Daphne Caruana Galizia was last year, so she was not protected.
Let me first start with something that Francis said earlier, censorship. Yes, this government has removed censorship, the censorship that you as a minister used to hold for every single play that used to be showed in our theatres here in Malta and Gozo. In fact, till a few years ago, we could not go to a number of plays here in Malta because they were censored by the nationalist government because it did not agree maybe with the line that these plays took. Such a shame that even in the arts and culture we had the intervention of government before. When it comes to whistleblower protection, for 25 years the Nationalist Party did not enact whistleblower legislation in our country. And now today we have a Whistleblowers Act, which is Benedek Javor, the Green MEP, the Green Member of European Parliament, Benedek Javor, said it is a benchmark for all of Europe to have the same whistleblower laws that we have here in Malta. As for the other accusations on the cleansing of memorials, well, everyone is free to protest here in Malta. We have seen a number of protests in the past year with regards to Daphne Caruana Galizia.
Is the government going to give a memorial, an official memorial?
Anyone can apply to have an official memorial for anyone on this country.
Is it going to be accepted?
So far, there have been no applications for anyone to enact a memorial for Daphne Caruana Galizia. But let's be clear, anything that is done, because we believe in the rule of law, because we believe that we should do everything and anything according to the laws of the country, can be done, but within the procedures that are written clearly in our laws, in our legal notices, and in our procedures. So definitely, anyone who would like to have such a memorial can apply, and that apply would be discussed within the committee that discusses such proposals, and obviously then such a memorial would be enacted. However, whilst everyone has the right to protest, and I would die to see that everyone will always have that right to protest. I was a protester myself many a times when we had a nationalist government that censored people, when the nationalist government censored theater productions, when the nationalist government censored books at our university, when it censored articles within student organization newspapers. Yes, we did protest, and that right is very important.
Which century was that?
It was only 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
Yes, not much long ago, when the Minister for Culture used to dictate basically what and who could and should publish articles in our in student organizations, newspapers, etc. So yes, that is why why I say that I love the new Malta, because we have had big changes within only 5 to 6 years, and it's not only on issues with regards to freedom of expression and censorship, but if you see civil liberties, civil rights in our country, yes, we have moved forward, and that is a very positive thing. We have not reached our goal, and maybe it's something that is very difficult to reach because it changes all the time. Because it changes. Our goal is to have an equal and fair Malta, a society in which anyone can always say and do what he or she wants within obviously the parameters of the law. But yes, we want more equality, and unfortunately we had a system where that was far away from the ideal, and we're moving forward.
Mr. Zemek, a word on equality?
The equality is simply not there. I mean,
was it in your time? Was it in your time?
When I hear my colleague, I think he's referring to some other country, quite frankly. Okay. I think he's living in some kind of cuckoo land. Yes. This is absolutely not reality.
Is that what the majority of Maltese?
Now, please do not interrupt, because I do not interrupt you.
Okay.
And
I listen.
And so please do not interrupt. I could have interrupted you very easily.
I listen.
Mr. Zemek.
So what equality are we talking about? We have a publication of a magisterial report. The Advocate General, the Attorney General of Malta, sends it to the Prime Minister. He even sends it to the Minister of Justice, whom he describes as the lawyer of the Prime Minister. And then he does not send it to the leader of the opposition. Is that equality? Do we have equality between whistleblowers? Or does it depend on what kind of whistle the whistleblower blows? I mean, Cyrus was referring to censorship on cultural grounds, on religious sentiment grounds. Fine. I think we have moved forward in doing away with that. I have no problem with that. But do we now want political censorship? Do we want political censorship in the kind of news that we receive from the public broadcaster? Do we want censorship in the Minister of Justice repeatedly denying the people's freedom of expression, in honoring the assassinated journalist because he sends the employees regularly to wipe out any form of manifestation? Isn't that freedom of expression? Isn't lighting of a candle freedom of expression? Isn't the putting up of a banner in public freedom of expression? And now we have government officially removing it, and we talk of freedom of expression.
This is not official. How can you take a place and say that it's yours and do whatever you like with a place, and to say this is a memorial if there's no official paper signed prior to that?
Yes, because in my language, freedom of expression does not depend on getting a permit from the government. In my language, if you have freedom of expression, yes, of course. A memorial which consists of candles, of flowers, of placing photos of the assassinated journalist. Is that so irritating to the government? Is it irritating to the government? We speak of culture, and the person responsible for the organization of Valletta 18 engages himself in language that is certainly not pleasant to the memory of the slain journalist. Is this the freedom we enjoy in Malta at the moment? It is all a mockery. This is all trying to live an age of make-believe. I don't believe in mockery. I believe in the real thing. I want a country where we really have democracy, where we really have rule of law. The Constitutional Court, only days ago, said that the investigation into the murder of Daphne Caruana Galizia was simply tainted. It was carried out by an assistant police commissioner who is married to one of the government ministers. So now we are not even sure that that investigation has been carried out according to the rule of law, about which I have heard so much from my colleagues.
Mr. Anger, a word on the rule of law and on the investigation itself.
Yes. If I may, I need to answer a number of assertions that Francis made earlier on. First of all, I think that Adrian Dalia, his leader, is not credible at all when it comes to the issue of the Egrant inquiry. He himself had said that the conclusions are very clear and that the conclusions are portraying what the actual report is saying. Obviously, neither he nor I have actually read the actual report. I look forward to read it, as I think everyone else does, but we have to operate within the rule of law limits and procedures. It is now up to the court to decide who and when this should be published, when the whole document should be published. I, as well as the Prime Minister, would like this to be published immediately. I would love to know with the whole details of what the conclusions actually said on the frame up for power that was made only about 2 years ago when Daphne Caruana Galizia, Pierre Poltelli, Simon Busuttil, David Casa, and others made this their own story and tried to destabilize the country in order to gain power. This is the biggest frame up that we have ever seen in our country when it comes to politics. I am very sorry to hear about the way that Mr. Zamid Demek believes that memorials or banners should be left without never being removed from anywhere. His colleague, David Casa, in the European Parliament, whose there were banners against him only a few days ago across the island, he himself sent his assistants to remove the banners from the streets.
Would you remove a negative banner against you, Mr.
No, I do not need to. There are a number of articles in the newspapers. Everyone is free to say whatever they want. But then after a while, everything is removed. They were removed. David Casa himself sent. Do you agree, Francis, with the way that David Casa sent his assistants to remove the banners from the streets? Do you agree with that? Because you do not agree with the candles being removed, but would you agree with that?
I think there's a totally different scenario.
Because it doesn't attack. Because now there's a nationalist candidate being attacked, and that is the difference. You believe that you have a divine right, you are superior, the nationalists believe that you are superior over anyone else. So if there's anything attacking a nationalist, that should be removed, but if there's anything attacking anyone who's Labour or has a different political alignment to yours, then yes, he or she may be attacked and vilified, even by blogger Daphne Caruana Galizia, and that is what you do.
Well, Cyrus is himself pointing out the difference. The memorial to Daphne Caruana Galizia does not attack anyone. It's a memorial in her honor. It's the placing of candles and flowers and a streamer that portrayed her face against the background of the flag of Malta. Was that an attack on anyone?
Why not have an official one?
That was not
Why
an
not
attack
apply to have an
anyone.
official one?
Is the government proposing to
Why not apply to have an official one?
Is the government proposing to set up a memorial in honor of Daphne Caruana Galizia? If the government is doing that, I haven't heard it yet. I haven't heard it yet. And what I would like to see from the government of Malta is real determination to find out who were the persons who commissioned this assassination. That is what to me is important. And
we agree on that.
Well, we agree on that. And incidentally, we keep hearing references to e-grant. But let me remind one and all that there were other issues even before e-grant. There was proof, ample proof, of a senior minister of government and chief of staff in the office of the prime minister holding secret companies as revealed through Panama Papers. Has government acted on that? Now, we're not talking e-grant here anymore. Has government acted on the other two cases? Or is government just completely...
Isn't it more an individual problem to open an account in Panama rather than a government one? It doesn't mean because you're nationalist or because you're Labour that you're going to open an account in Panama.
If you are a minister of government or if you are chief of staff of the prime minister, it is not an individual problem. It is a national scandal, and any democratic government would act immediately and dismiss the people concerned.
Did you condemn Osengat when you were a minister? Did you condemn Minister Osengat?
Dismiss the people concerned.
Did you condemn Minister Osengat when you were minister? You sat in the same cabinet. You worked together in the same government. Minister Osengat had an account, a secret account in Switzerland, which he said he had forgotten that he had over €1 million in, and you never said anything on this. Back then it was fine because once again he was a nationalist member of parliament, he was a nationalist minister, therefore everything is fine. I'm not saying that it is fine. I'm not saying that it is a good thing, and action has been taken. But let's put things in context. It is incredible how in this country, anytime that there's anything against someone who is not nationalist, then this has to become, there's a whole character assassination on that person. But what if it is a nationalist person who does anything similar, then it is fine and everyone shuts up. And that is the difference. And that is why I am happy with the way our country is changing its laws, where we no longer look at anyone who, whatever political party they feel they vote for or they pertain to. Today we have a total different government that does not look at color, but looks at what is right, and looks at what is right. Yes, that is the truth. You might laugh at it, you might find it funny.
Oh yes,
you might find it funny, but you do not see. But
What is
I think
right? Excuse me. What is
because the
right
government certainly
for
looks
you?
at colors in the way it makes appointments, incidentally.
what
So of
is-
course I would laugh at this.
I really love the way that Manuel
Mr.
Dalia was
Angier,
appointed
Mr.
in your
Angier.
time and led one of the
Mr. Angier,
worst reforms ever in
Mr.
public
Angier,
transport. Yes.
What is right for your government?
On what?
What is the right thing to do? You told me what matters to you is to do the right thing.
Yes.
What is the right thing to do
Yes,
for you?
the
In
right-
this case, we're talking about freedom of
Yes,
expression.
in this case,
and
for instance, if
journalism.
we take the investigation onto the death of Daphne Caruana Galizia, in only 50 days, 3 people were arrested, allegedly for killing Daphne Caruana Galizia. Investigations are still ongoing. The right thing to do is what this government is doing. All resources are available to the police, to the inquiring magistrates, to the courts, to find who was the person who sent these people to kill Daphne Caruana Galizia. The right thing is not to intrude in the investigations, not to try and tamper with the investigations, but to let the investigations being carried out by the independent investigators, by the courts, in order to reach results. Sometimes I wonder, is this what the Nationalist Party wants, or half of the Nationalist Party? Is this what Simon Bouzoutil's faction,
Mr.
the Nationalist Party wants? They try to...
I think you're not in a good position to say what the Nationalist Party wants. I think Mr. Zemed Demek can say what the Nationalist Party
I'll
wants.
tell you what the Nationalist Party wants. It's very clear in our statement. It's also totally in line with what the family of Daphne Caruana Galizia would like. It is high time that the government stops bringing excuses, stops trying to engage in further spin, in further outright lies, in further distortion of truth. The government is challenged here and now again to conduct a public inquiry that will establish whether Daphne should have been protected much further in the first place, to prevent the assassination in the first place, to check whether the investigation carried out since then has been of the caliber and carried out in a manner that will actually lead to find out who commissioned the crime. We already know from the Constitutional Court that that investigation was not carried out in the way it should have been carried out. So government now faces
How should
this.
it have been carried out?
Well, it should have been carried out by having the utmost independent investigators possible.
Wasn't it the case?
The Constitutional Court has just confirmed it was not the case, because you had the chief investigating officer, a person who, by definition, was in a situation of conflict of interest, because he is married to one of the ministers within the government.
This, Mr. Angier?
I think that the investigations are being done in an independent manner, irrespective of who does them. I mean, we have seen in this country a number of presidents, for instance, who have come from different political parties, but once they're doing their job as president, they're objective and independent in the role that they are doing. And I think that is what was happening in the police force. That said, we respect the rule of law. The Constitutional Court spoke, and it's actually the police force acted accordingly, and that is what should always be done. What I see, though, is a nationalist party that always tries to waste the court's time at times, where it continuously goes to court, continuously opens different inquiries, which is fine. They can do it. It's all within any citizen's right in reality. But the fact that they do it continuously, they are not letting the courts, they are not letting the police force, they are not letting the Attorney General do their work because they are all the time trying to put spokes in their wheels, basically. Let's leave for example, the countless inquiry requests, magisterial inquiry requests that the Nationalist Party is all the time going to court to open. And we have seen Simon Bouzoutil, for instance. It was a farce, seeing the leader of opposition back then going with a number of box files in court, wasting the court's time, and in reality had nothing in them. It was very clear through the pictures. So this is what the Nationalist Party has been doing. Let's leave our institutions do their work serenely. Let's not try to put spokes in their wheels. If we really want that whoever ordered the killing of Daphne Caruana Galizia is caught, let's allow the institutions to do their job. If we are continuously trying to stop them from doing their job to do something else, then that is very wrong. And that is why sometimes I ask myself what the intention is of these
how is
people
anyone
who
trying
try
to stop the investigation? How is anybody trying to do that?
The number of inquiries that today we are seeing being opened all the time in the past 2 years by Nationalist Party activists or Nationalist Party politicians in our courts is all the time hampering the work, the normal course of work that the courts and investigators would have. And I think that is a big pity, which makes you wonder, what is their ultimate aim? It makes me wonder, what does the Nationalist Party want out of this?
Zamid, what is your ultimate aim?
My ultimate aim is to really see the institutions work. Does anybody following this program think that the institutions in Malta are working? I don't think so. Do we see the Financial Intelligence Analysis Services, the unit FIU, working in Malta? Of course it is not working. They would have report after report about the situation, for instance, in Pilatus Bank. Do they act? Or do they act now at a rather late stage? Maybe because of pressure from the European Banking Authority? Do we see the police force working in Malta? Do we see the police force functioning properly? What? With 3, 4, 5 police commissioners in the space of 5 years? Do we not recall that a report had been presented to FIAU? Isn't that a government institution? Do we not recall that the chief executive of that unit had resigned after that report was presented? Do we not recall that the then commissioner of police had resigned? Are these institutions that are functioning in this country? It is an outright lie. The institutions in this country at the moment are not working. The institutions in this country are hijacked by the Labour government. I want a free Malta. That's the Malta I want. I want a Malta that respects human rights. I want a Malta that guarantees our future. I want a Malta where our reputation is one where I live to be proud of it, and not one that is tainted by the actions of criminality by the present government. That's the Malta I believe in.
I think that Mr. Zamid Demek is a bit cut off from the people here in Malta. Maybe he's spending too much time in Brussels and Strasbourg, because if you see the latest polls... because if you see the latest polls on the Times of Malta, for instance, the majority of Maltese people do have trust in our institutions, do trust the police, do trust the courts, do trust all the Maltese independent institutions, but they have said one thing: they do not trust the Nationalist Party to lead this country. They said it once, they said it twice, and with a bigger majority each and every time. It is because the Nationalist Party has no credibility to speak on human rights, to speak on civil liberties.
People are changing over the years. What do you know that in 10 years the Nationalist Party won't be eligible for that?
Actually, I hope that the Nationalist Party, not in 10 years, now becomes a credible opposition, which is not. It is not at the moment, because it's totally split up and in fighting within itself. I want to see a Malta which has a credible opposition. Unfortunately, we do not. Let's see why people actually do have faith in the Maltese institutions, why people do actually believe that this government is the government for human rights, for civil liberties, because it is the government that is actually enacting legislation, that it is the government that has brought equality in this country for all, irrespective of a person's class, gender, sexual orientation, race, or creed. So yes, and that is one of the expressions where you can express yourself in being who you are, which the Nationalist Party never allowed you to do.
What about press?
The freedom of the press. I think that the press reform was a big step forward. This has been this has been also confirmed by the Malta Institute for Journalists, who have also applauded the government for the courage it showed in the way that it has changed legislation. It has given more powers to the press. It has removed the way that citizens or politicians could take the press to court and freeze their assets, for instance. That no longer can be done. That is a big victory for journalists. Well, it was within the law. That was the law that the Nationalist Party lived there for 25 years. That was the law. And the Nationalist Party never used it. But that was the law, and the Nationalist Party never removed that law. So if it is there, citizens could always make use of it. And some
were
did
frozen
make use of it.
when the Labour Party was elected, no?
There were instances when a minister, for instance, when Daphne Caruana, let's not forget what Daphne Caruana Galizia and Simon Busuttil did. They invented the biggest lie in the history of our political system, where black on white, now we know that what Daphne said, what Simon Busuttil said, what Francis Zamid Demek and David Casa said in the European Parliament was a total lie. Adrian Dalia,
what is the lie?
The lie was that E-Grant was the prime ministers or of one of the members of his family. That is a lie. But it seems that, obviously, since they think that they are superior to everyone, although black on white, now we do know that it is a lie, Simon Busuttil has decided to repeat this lie. Adrian Dalia is very cautious, on the other hand, and is saying that, no, it is definitely not Joseph Muscat. Simon Busuttil saying, I wonder what Francis thinks. Do you agree with Simon Busuttil or do you agree with Adrian Dalia? Is Igran Joseph Muscat?
Since you asked me the question, I think there's a very simple answer to that. The court has said that there is no evidence that would link Igran to the Prime Minister or to a member of his family, but the court stops there. And
no, the court didn't stop there.
I will ask the public here.
The court did not stop there.
I will ask the public or even Cyrus here.
The court did not stop there.
Who can tell us to whom does Igran belong? Because we still have a right to find out.
The court did not stop there.
We still have a right to find out. We will know completely what the court said when we will have full access to the full Igran report.
But the court did not stop there.
And I think you're both waiting for it.
Yes, definitely, but the court did not stop there. The court also said that whoever invented the lie that Igran was Joseph Muscat also went to lengths in order to fabricate documents to show that it was his, false documents. It also said that there were people who forged signatures in order to show that this is Joseph Muscat. That is what the court said, and notwithstanding what the court said, Simon Busuttil and half of your party still believe that this is Joseph Muscat. Your leader says that it is not, but you and a number of others believe that you should go against your leader, say that it is still Joseph Muscat.
I would like to know to whom it belongs.
But do you agree
I
with
have
Adrian
a
Dalia?
right to know
Do you
to
agree
whom
with
it
Adrian
belongs.
Dalia?
And I would like Cyrus to tell me to whom it belongs.
Do you agree with Adrian Dalia?
I would like Cyrus to tell me to whom it belongs. I work with the leadership of the party. I'm very close to the leadership of the party. I have no issue with that.
So you agree with Adrian Dalia?
I have always been close to the leadership of the party, and I would like to see truth prevail in this country. The truth is being suffocated. Cyrus refers to the reforms in the Press Act. Well, the reforms admittedly are not bad, but I will also tell you why they are not bad. They are not bad because they do not reflect the first and initial intention of what the government had published by way of a new press law.
How?
Well, because there is a complete change between the initial draft and what was then insisted upon by the journalists.
A government that listens.
The initial draft was a draft whereby government would have insisted, for instance, on registration of all blogs, of all websites. It would have been a very, very undemocratic process. And there were protests against that, strong protests, including a strong protest in Valletta by the people, organized by the Nationalist Party against what the government was proposing. And government, on this point, yes, changed radically from the initial proposals. But what I would like to see in my country is not so much the enactment of laws, but I would like to see in my country action, good governance in reality, equality in reality, respect for journalists in reality, respect for the people.
And I think that would be the last word for tonight.
To enact laws and then act in complete juxtaposition, distinction to those laws, to me is sheer hypocrisy.
You still haven't told us whether you agree with Simon or Adrian, and you do not want to answer that, it seems.
I do not wish to have hypocrisy.
Thank you.
We
never have any answers.
And thank you for coming tonight to our show to debate with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And this discussion was recorded in the afternoon due to availability reasons. That was our special episode on freedom of the media and freedom of expression. We'll be back tomorrow at 6 in the morning with the daily update. Good night.